So, brothers and sisters, thank you so much for coming so that we could have this training, a very important training, I believe, because looking at our conference, there is a lot of conflicts going on in our churches, and many a time there are conflicts between the pastor and the church, or the pastor and the church elders, or just between members. And when these conflicts occur, you have some negative ramifications on the progress of mission, that we all want to see mission progressing, but it is jeopardized in one way or another. So these are some of the things that informed my decision to come up with this training. Initially, I meant that we only have it for elders and deacons and deaconesses, but then I looked at it again and I said it is an area where we all need to grow in. So as the elders grow, pastors also need their skills. Of course, we have skills that we may have gained in the seminary or by reading a lot of books, but we always need iron to sharpen iron. So that is why I thought it wise that we have this training. You'll realize that it was not in the calendar of events. So it's something that I felt was urgent. Even right now, there are churches that are in turmoil. I believe we can get some skills, and then it can reduce some of the pressures there. So we are happy to have our presenter, Pastor Samuel Ngui. Samuel Ngui is trained as a pastor, but he's also trained in this area of conflict resolution. So he's an expert, and he has graciously accepted to help us in this area. So he will be making presentations today, tomorrow, and then on Wednesday. And looking at the flyer, you saw the flyer that we have very good topics there. I think he will be using the imagery of a plane, because I can see there he's talking about preparing for a smooth takeoff, dealing with turbulence, and landing the plane safely. So I believe it's going to be very interesting and helpful. So Pastor Sam Ngui, thank you for taking time and welcome.
Good morning, my colleagues and fellow ministers in South England Conference.
Good morning.
Thank you, Pastor Laszlo. I want to acknowledge that I did not come into this area of study because I liked it. I was pushed into it, but I've come to love it because there is something that having some skills gives you some leverage in terms of dealing with conflict. And that's what I want to share with you, some of the things. Those who were there in 2015, who are working with SEC then, Dr. Delisa gave me opportunity to share, 2016, to share some of the things that I had found and discovered during my study. But today, I want us to look at conflict, because conflict is inevitable. It is going to be there, whether we like it or not, whether we are prepared or not. But it's best to be prepared for when it comes. Then you can move it along in some ways. Or if you don't move it along, you can know how to deal with it in a very effective manner. Now, in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, the Bible says, verse 7, and war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought. But they did not prevail, nor was their place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now, we know from then, as Adventists, we know that the issues of Genesis chapter 3 takes hold in the garden. And Adam is removed from the garden because of conflict that had already begun in heaven. And so I want to assure you one thing, that conflict is not new. Conflict is going to be there. Conflict exists in the church, and the church must know how to deal with it. And if we don't, then we miss the opportunity. We miss the great opportunities. So in our discussion for today, because we have broken this into 3 areas. The first area, I hope you're seeing the PowerPoint.
Yes, Pastor.
Okay, so we will be looking at the preparation, the smooth takeoff, because conflict is always going to be there. How do we prepare when a conflict happens, and how do we address it? That is the smooth takeoff. So our analogy of plane is going to be looking at preparation when conflict begins to when conflict ends or is addressed, and they're in between, because it's going to be there. One of the things that you will discover is that conflict has always been in the church. While some conflicts can be prevented, some of them cannot be prevented at all, and they will show up. And some of them are very unhealthy conflicts that we experience. Now, when conflict takes place, it is important to handle it well, because a mishandled conflict within the church causes more damage than a conflict that has just as equally as a conflict that has been ongoing for a long time. We need to note that in the church, in our churches that we pastor, there are some conflict addicts, and people who are just addicted to conflict, and they cause pain, which is immense to other people in the church. I want, conflict addicts are not many, but whenever one appears, they can cause immense trouble in the church. I was given a story of someone I knew many years back who seemed to have conflicts rotate around him everywhere he was, and he was an elder. There were times when he would have conflict erupting, and you wonder, why does it have to be with this one man, why this one individual, that wherever they are, instead of calming the situation and having peace, what is it that they do so different that there's most of the time a conflict arising? And one time there was this conflict, and it was so bad the pastor had to go off sick for a long time, and he broke someone's leg in the church. So it moved from the emotional conflict to physical conflict. So from emotional abuse to physical abuse. And when he broke someone's hand, so many people left that congregation and they said they can't cope. Therefore, conflict is very costly, both financially, human health, our mental well-being are affected and impacted by conflict. And also human resource is impacted in ways that sometimes you want to find people to work in certain offices in your local church, and nobody wants to work with a certain person. If they're in a certain department, they say, no, I'm not taking that department. I have tried to counteract that by not telling people who is going to be there, but I've been disappointed many times, because some people want to know who is the head of that department. Who else am I going to be working with? And when they hear certain names, they don't tell you as a pastor, but they will come to a place where they say, no, pastor, this year I just want to rest. But if you ask them to serve in another ministry where somebody else is serving, they might be happy and generous in giving their time. And there are times when people move from your congregation to other congregations or even stay at home. And now after COVID, it's even more difficult because people can access worship from Friday night in Australia, when Australia opens their churches, to the time Californian churches close, because there's variety out there. So how do we address these individuals who cost us so much within our local congregations, especially where we pastor? Word, that is good, and it's good news. And I like this statement by Clark in his book. He says, every conflict offers an opportunity for transformation that fundamentally impact our lives. So there's good news, even when there's conflict. When it's well handled, well managed, there are times when we benefit as a result of that conflict. Now, there are those, and this is Rediger in his book, Clergy Killers. He addresses how we have individuals within the church who are just there to take on the pastor. There are not many, but when you may have only one in your congregation, and you may actually go through your ministry in a local congregation, and you don't experience even one who seems to be a clergy killer. But who are clergy killers? Clergy killers are people who intentionally target pastors for serious injury or destruction. And there it could be both physical, it could be character-wise, it could be emotional, it could be, they will take you to task, to toll. And how do you manage those individuals? Because they will be there. They rarely appear, but when they do appear, they can really put you to task. These are not normal people who disagree with the pastor on an issue, or who hinder him, or are inadvertently unplanned, or even oppose some of pastoral projects or issues. You need people who are normal, and their normality is people who will disagree with you and tell you why they are disagreeing with you, and offer support to help your ministry prosper in that local congregation. It's not the ones that we are talking about. And you cannot put everyone who seems to oppose you and label them as a clergy killer. No. You need people who can stand and say, Pastor, I think we need to take a different direction on this issue. Have them, and don't put them out of your board, because the moment you put all those people out of your board, then your board is going to be, you are going to run a ministry that is ineffective for the members and for the communities around us. So you need some people who will say, Pastor, let's consider this. Those are, and there are people who will hurt you, not necessarily because they want to, but it happens accidentally. Or even people who oppose some of your projects, not good people and normal people. Sometimes they will say, Pastor, we don't think this is the project for this time. And you can sit back and find a way of working and bringing them in if you are very and totally convinced that is the project for that time. And if you can't, don't feel defeated. Don't feel defeated. The clergy killers are deadly and have expandable influence that typically attracts people with common gripes, frustrations, or misguided agendas. Such often unwitting cohorts can produce a numbing fear in the pastor and the congregation that odds of people are organized against them. And that resistance to their agenda will only bring personal injury to those who resist. In reality, however, only clergy killer is deadly. So there are people who surround the clergy killer. And when you identify them, because we are going to try to see how we can identify those individuals within our congregations, we can work around don't think everyone who follows them is out to take care of you. Some of them are out there and they are frustrated, they are misguided, and they have some gripes with the ministry and with the church. And when they appear, when a clergy killer appears in the scene, then they seem to gravitate around that individual. However, a note to take is be careful of labeling people as clergy killers and mistreating them. There are 6 D characteristics that we need to look at of a clergy killer phenomena. You can actually find this book, and it's a very good resource for you as a minister. Don't know if you can see it. I'll take a photo of it and post it. It is written by Lloyd Rediger. I find it very good resource because it helps you when you identify to find ways of dealing with them. So the first D is that they are destructive. They are destructive, and they will do whatever they can to make sure that you experience the pain of their destruction. So as a pastor, you need to be aware that their agenda is not to build. Their agenda is not to build. Their agenda is to destroy people, destroy characters, and especially the minister. There are some individuals within our churches, and I'm sorry to say this, who may have wanted to be in the ministry, but they have never been taken on. They have never been deployed, and so what they rather employed. And so what they will, some of them, not many of them, a few of them will try to put out their qualifications for the church, know that they are more qualified even than the pastor, if possible. There are times when they will try to to show themselves as though they know more. They are more able than the pastor who is there. So they will try to bring you down. They will try to bring you down. So clergy killers are marked by the intentional destructiveness. They don't just disagree or criticize. They insist on influencing, pain, and damaging their targets. Their tactics include sabotage, subverting worthy causes, inciting others to do their dirty work, and causing victims to self-destruct. These individuals will be there. They are not many, though. Thank God for that. But when they appear in sin, that's number 1D that they will try to achieve, destroy you as a pastor. Number 2, they are very determined. They don't stop. They don't stop. They may pause. They may even at times go underground or change tactics, but they will intimidate network. They will intimidate. They will network, they will break any rules of decency to accomplish their destruction. They insist that their agenda has priority. That's how determined they are. If pastor puts up a project, they will bring a counter project so that they can really make sure that the pastor is frustrated. They are deceitful individuals. They manipulate, they camouflage, they misrepresent and accuse others of their own tactics. So they know your tactics as a pastor, so they will accuse you that in your tactics you are out to get them or to bring someone else down, even when that is not what you do or what you intend to do. Their statements and negotiations are not trustworthy. You negotiate with them out there, and when you come to you can. And I know many of you as pastors, you know, there are times when you have items on the agenda that you need to discuss with your elders on one-to-one to know where they are, to gauge where they are, especially if it is a very important item and you really want support on that. And while you are doing that, in order to bring people together with you and move the church forward, Clergy Killer will also be doing the same, but they will, because they know what you do as a pastor, they will counteract that by ganging individuals alongside and away alongside them, so that they can together now create a force to fight you. Number 4, some of them are demonic. Now, when we think of demonic individuals, we really, and in this country we don't identify people and put them in this category, because you might be led to thinking of exorcising them, but some individuals could be demonic possessed. Clergy killers are evil and they may be mentally disordered. Depending on how you define intentions and behavior that do not yield to patience and love or honor human decency, spiritual leaders become symbols of and scapegoats for internal pain and confusion those individuals feel. Because of their mental pain and spiritual confusion, which are unidentified and untreated, they foment unusual, reactive, and destructive motivations. These evil characteristics may also be apparent when there is no other cause that explains a clergy killer behavior. We will have a few of those. I remember a minister shared with me one day when he was in his church, and his church had a very great front door, which was glass door. And this gentleman who was so angry with the pastor came to his church, and when he found the church was locked, and they knew the pastor was inside because his car was outside, parked in the car park. What the individual did, they took a stone, huge stone, and broke the glass door because they wanted to access the pastor and deal with the pastor. Of course, that individual is mentally unwell. And some of them are some people who come to our churches. And let me also say this. After COVID, we know we have the after COVID syndrome and disorders that accompany it. There are some individuals who we know who we may think were unstable before COVID, but after COVID, they're even more unstable. So as a pastor, you need to watch out, and you need to be sure that sometimes those individuals can create trouble in your personal life. How do you deal with that? So number 5, the 5th D, is that this category of individuals live in denial. This indicates the way the church colludes in agenda of the clergy killer. Such denial leaves clergy killers unrestrained and the whole church vulnerable. They are not just going to fight you as a pastor. They are going to fight some other members within the church, especially those members who seem to offer you support. So in preparation, when you are going to have a smooth takeoff, you need to be able to identify whether this individual is a clergy killer, whether this individual is a conflict addict, because then you can know how to deal with them. And if they are not in those categories, then your approach to conflict resolution is going to be slightly different, because if you have identified the issues, then you approaching an individual you may think you're in conflict with gives you the ability to know how to deal with them. And therefore, the 6th D is very important, discernment. This is a prescriptive D. The spiritual discernment is God's grace proffered in an enlightened person who sees and understands evil, and he himself or herself to be empowered by God's Holy Spirit to become an agent of exorcism. And here within Advent Church, we don't do exorcism, but we do prayers that do work. Discernment follows by confronting evil, in this case, the clergy killers. This confrontation works best in a healthy community of faith. So it's not only you who's going to confront them, but the rest of the church need to be in support of you so that they understand this individual. I began by making a note that do not label everyone you see in your congregation as a troublemaker. Don't, because some of them are there actually to enrich your ministry. So within the discernment, there are other issues that we need to look at and characteristics that are important. And those for you as a minister, you need to look out for those who have intimidating power. Some individuals can have intimidating power, which violate the rules of decorum and the caring that the rest of us will end up following. Rather, those rules and decorum that we care about and we follow, they don't care about it. They don't care about it. This is a powerful weapon at a subconscious level. We sense that such people are willing to escalate the fight and use tactics that forbid ourselves to use. You know, they will do things that you as a pastor cannot do. They will, in open and before people, call you names, and you can't call them names back because you are the minister. So you need to be aware of those individuals who sometimes can have such intimidating power. I remember one of our colleagues shared with us an experience where he had an individual who had been trying to find him and bring him down, and he had such an intimidating power, but he realized that the pastor was always ahead. So what he did one day, as pastor had finished preaching and was going out of the church and was busy greeting people at the exit, this individual comes, instead of shaking pastor's hands, he steps back, he clenches his fist and beats the pastor to the ground on a Sabbath. He has been in that congregation. The church has been blessed by the message the pastor has preached, but this guy is so angry. And not because nobody is following him, he begins to beat the pastor. You as a pastor cannot beat him back. You know that. These clergy killers are masters of disguise. They are masters of disguise. When they choose to be, they can present themselves as pious, active members who are only doing this for the good of the church. So they are cleansing the church by taking on the pastor. Often they convince naive parishioners that they are raising legitimate issues. It is not uncommon for clergy killers to hide among their allies of opportunity. And I mentioned those allies of opportunity earlier on. Members who are their friends or congregational power brokers who are disgruntled with the church. Disguise is irrelevant to many clergy killers. However, they may find power in fighting openly. They use bluster, threats, and terrorism to appear as an unstoppable giants. They imitate by letting everyone know that they will fight dirty and use any tactics to gain their ends. For most gentle and peace and for most gentle and peace at all costs parishioners, such threats are adequate to keep them on the sidelines, allowing the pastor and our supporters to cope the best they can. Now, we know when such fights, when such individuals appear on scene, I continue to say these ones are very rare, but when they appear, they can cause you damage. They also cause collateral damage to your spouses, to your family members, to those close associates you have, of deeply. They cause them deeply deep distress, and they abuse the pastor. Often, and or abused pastor often suffer such collateral damage. Pastors, we know we sometimes can suffer our health from these individuals. Our health can suffer immeasurably. There are times when they have pushed the pastor to a place where even his marriage, their marriages are broken because the way the pastor will deal with them may appear misguided, and there I'm saying misguided even to those of their family members, so they may choose to, some of our family members may choose to side with those individuals unknowingly of what they are out to do. So we have people who suffer as collateral damage, or suffer collateral damage within the process. It is not uncommon for them to be irreparably damaged, our families especially, because they typically do not have even the minimal support and protection afforded to the pastors who are stressed and under attack. But we know within SEC, one of the things that SEC has done is when you are going through immeasurable or immense pain because of, as a result of ministry, you and your immediate family have access to pastoral counseling, which is conducted by an outside body, and the conference picks up the tab. So here, the conference understands this, and they give you opportunity where your immediate family can receive, but there are members who will never receive that. So they become they suffer the collateral damage. Now, having spoken of those others out there, let me come to the pastor, the killer clergy, the clergy who himself is the one who causes pain on others. And how can I and you identify that you are not actually a killer clergy, one who kills the members here? Number one, our mental health is important, and we can't claim that within the ministry there are pastors that every pastor is mentally healthy. Some pastors have mental disorders, and if you feel that you need some support, that support can be offered through your GP and others, just to support you to go through your mental and well-being or illness that you may experience, and sometimes give up the ministry. But before you give up, there are things that can be done. Now, let me emphasize on this point, because this is a story I was told many years back, and this minister had been going to church, and he was going through marital challenges with his wife, and he came to a place where he could not cope anymore. And one Sabbath is to preach, and some people who are mature in faith notice that someone was totally different and uncharacteristic of him, and they said, a few of them discussed and said, how can we help our pastor? And when they decided to go and help the pastor said, no, I'm fine, I'm okay, everything is all right. Then as the month progressed, the 3 other Sabbaths that he preached in that congregation, one of them was so out of character, so bad, that the members said, no, we need help here. We need help. We can't cope with this minister, because he was mentally he was experiencing mental disorder that had developed as a result of what he was going through in his own family. So we know we pastors can also fall into that. And sometimes what happens when we become the killer instead of the ones who bring redemption and words of help, then it's important for us to look for help. Resistance to close relationships is one of those things that can identify us as people who are experiencing mental disorder. You begin to cut off yourself from everybody else, so you live a solitary life, and indifference to criticism when people are there and criticizing what you are doing. All you are thinking is that they are not doing the right thing for the pastor, they are not supportive, and you don't want helping efforts from anyone. And social personality disorder can also be added to this, to the clergy killer, such as failure to conform to normal behavior patterns. Deceitfulness kicks in, irritability, you become very irritable and aggressive, impulsiveness, and consistent irresponsibility, lack of guilt and remorse, and a long-standing history. Those can add on to the pastor becoming the killer instead of the one who brings words of hope. Then there is interference or reversing health of the church. Now, when we talk of interference here, when you are posted into a new district, when you get there and you find a healthy church, instead of supporting the church programs, you begin to interfere with what they have been doing. Even when you want to introduce great things, you need to be careful that you are not introducing them so fast that you impact the life of the church, and the church comes to a standstill because of the way you are reversing everything that is natural tendencies of the congregation, which is to nurture and outreach in mission by not encouraging and nurturing efforts in parishioners. So when you get into a church that is functioning well, and you know they are busy with outreach, they are very supportive congregation, don't reverse those things. Support those and add on more as you move along, but don't stop what is happening. Many years back, when I started my ministry, I had a very good president. For one thing, there are many things I could blame him for, but one thing he told me, Pastor, when you are posted into a congregation and they have a project that they are running, do not stop it to start your project. Continue with the project that you find in the new district, and as you complete it, introduce your project when the members are already in the know that you are supportive of their project. Remember, pastors we pastors come and go from every congregations, but members are always there. When members have had a project that they were doing and carrying out with the previous pastor, don't bring it to a halt even if you disagree with it. Find ways of supporting them to complete that project. Some of them may be very difficult for you to accept, but you find a way of fitting in. Then the clergy or the killer clergy is the one who intentionally is deceitful and dissembling, denying, manipulating, and accusing others to distract from one's own tactics. So basically, you begin to manipulate individuals within the church, and you are become deceitful, and basically you are breaking down other people so that you can build yourself. Don't avoid that, because that can be identified as you being the killer instead. So and another characteristic that will be displayed by the killer clergy is a persistent destructive agenda, lack of leadership, especially in communication, which causes confusion and frustration. Poor sermons become our output on Sabbaths. These are things that we we can look out for ourselves. And if you happen to come in my congregation and you realize some of these things are happening in my life, pull me aside and say, Pastor, there's something that I've noticed. And you don't have to be defensive and raise your fences up so that everyone thinks, rather you feel you are the only one who knows. There are times when we might do things sometimes, and as a colleague, we can be of help to others. If my sermon is poor, call me and say, Pastor Sam, I was in your church last Sabbath as you saw me, and I actually realized that your sermon was poor. Remember, we used to do those critiques when we were training, those sermonettes that we prepared and would critique each other. Don't leave that art of critiquing a colleague. But of course, you need to be kind in order to build. You need to know that clergy can receive further training, medical treatment, or outplacement, which is a transfer from the district that they are, so that they can be built up. Now, briefly, let me talk about toxic congregations. There are congregations that are toxic. Remember, I mentioned something to do with conflict addicts. Sometimes they begin to recruit others into their addiction. Just as we know, some addicts of drugs and others will try to recruit others to support them. Toxic. There are some congregations that are toxic with conflict. Those toxic congregations are unable to see or understand their toxicity and its consequences. They lack self-awareness. In fact, they may regard as legitimate and normal what we can see as toxicity. This is what Rediger in his book speaks to. And so long simmering competitions within congregations and disagreements that produce a self-destructive conflagration. So they are like little fires burning within those congregations. And those congregations, by the way, good news is that there are not many. Toxic congregations are very few. And this is how I would explain this about toxic congregations. Toxic congregations are like people who, when they move, relocate their homes and live next to the railway line. The first night or the first week, the first month, it may take them long to get to sleep because of trains running late in the night. But you come to a place after a year and you don't even know that trains were ever running on that track. Or you move somewhere where there is a dump, near a dump of waste materials, and you can't leave that day. But if you end up buying a house near that place, you might end up actually getting a lot of sleep after a year or so. And you forget that there was a dump until someone comes and tells you, you know what, you live next to a dump, Pastor. Why did you choose to live next to a dump? And you say, what dump? Because you are part of it. Rather, it has been the toxicity in your life and what is produced in the dump causes you not to experience it anymore. You lack awareness of what is happening. And so it is with churches that are filled with conflict, and they are toxic with their conflicts. They don't know what is happening within them, among themselves, but sometimes you go into such church and you can feel the tension in the air. And I thank God I said there are not many. There are not many. So, Pastor, I don't have much time. I will continue with this tomorrow, because this I wish I would have finished this today. Maybe tomorrow, if we start on time, we can go through these most common and damaging toxins within the church, especially when the pastor is involved and it becomes the target. The pastor. Let me mention this slide, then we can end. There is a pastor will receive persistent use of innuendos from the individuals who are involved, who are in this toxic environment. There are some innuendos that you will experience as you move forward within with your ministry there, and you need to begin to find way of detoxifying, and it's not a one-day thing that you do and you say you have done your work. There are ways that we can use. So in such a congregation, public and secret attacks on integrity and competence of you as a minister is put out, and also other members. Imitation and threats through financial matters that this department wants and they can't receive from the treasurer because they are holding the funds. Physical harm or threat of harm, also or property damage. Persistent resistance to programs and ideas unwanted by the perpetrators. Number 6, false reports to denominational officials. The conference receives letters about the pastor, about you, and you are not even aware. Extreme opposition to instruction and orders from authorities. Judgmental actions to the point of theological cleaning, and you find them in Sabbath school. Some of the individuals who live in this are toxic. Unwillingness to use civil conflict resolution methods, continual use of disrespect and violation of moral and spiritual Christian norms. These you'll find in the book identified by Rediger in his book, Toxic Congregations. Now, I will stop. If there is a question, you can state it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pastor Ngui. Brethren, I think the floor is now open for questions. The floor is now open for questions. And if you have any question, this is the time to raise it. Any question? Do we have any questions? Pastor Laszlo.
Yes, thank you very much. Obviously, we were talking about situations in which we have so-called conflict addicts. And we have a situation like that, and we are so troubled because we don't know what to do, because the person is causing lots of conflicts, many times publicly in the church during the service or before or after the service, suspecting some kind of mental issues. Or I know that it's horrible, but I had a 6.5 hour WhatsApp message exchange with her yesterday, just simply asking if she would like to apologize for anything. Have she found anything in herself after an inventory of heart and mind? And she wants a church board hearing, and she wants to tell everything what she would like to accuse us in 2 hours. She has 2 hours to speak, and we know what it is. There are dozens of witnesses of all these excavated situations in the church, which was always started by her, and we just don't know what to do. We cannot put a bobby on the front of the church that you cannot come in. On the other hand, we are really worried about the well-being of the church. What can we do?
There are times when you will need outside help, then use your internal individuals, because especially when something has been ongoing for a long time, what tends to happen is if you as a pastor approach that individual on your own, they will accuse you, and they will lie, they will deceive to get their end. So if you have tried and you know that there are issues, and you have done what you could, you have done pastoral visit, of course, with your elders or pastoral team members, and it hasn't matured anything, and it has continued to happen, And sometimes when you visit, they come and disclose in the church. Oh, pastor visited me and this is what they were telling me. So you need to be very careful. But you can come to a place where you say, you know what, sister, I think we need to sit with you, but we need someone else to come and sit with us so that they can hear what you are saying, so that we can all get help. So don't put them as the problem, because the moment you identify them as the problem, remember, they might be having mental health issues.
It's interesting because, you know, it is, I really spent not dozens, maybe hundreds of hours with her. And it is a spiral. And she understands that there is some problem, comes back. And finally, last year, we achieved a point when she accepted that she needs a mediator and she needs counseling. And we started she started the counseling with the SEC counseling system service. And she again forgot everything what she did wrong. And she asked me, so what was the reason why I started counseling? I can't remember. And this is what's happening.
Yeah, Pastor, sometimes you need, because you go round and round and you can't break into that cycle. You get someone else to be involved, and outside, someone who is known to the church, who may be a Christian too, or even non-Christian, and come and just listen. And if you think it's bordering into mental health issues, if you can get a mental health professional to come and sit in that meeting, you might discover things that you never knew. And so then the person can get the best help, if it's mental health. If it's not, and it has to do with the way they relate with others in conflict, and you get mediators. Mediators will not help much when that is happening. You get a counselor. Counselor will do what they can, but they may not fully help. But if you realize that you think, because you cannot diagnose, Pastor, and I cannot diagnose anyone. So if you bring a mental health professional consultant in the room and say, we are going to have this exercise, we are going to talk about our issues. Of course, we have already informed the mental health professional that you suspect there's an individual. Don't even tell the health professional who that is. Let them discover. They will tell you, I discover from your discussions so and so may be having this form of disorder. Then they can be referred and get the proper help. Remember, we are there to support our church members, whether they are in good health and sometimes in bad health, and that includes mental health.
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, maybe could I speak to you after some time, because I don't want to take everything away from the other participants.
It's okay.
Thank you so much, Pastor Laszlo, and Pastor Ngui. Thank you for the response. We are ready. We are always ready to speak to you at some other time, as suggested. Is there any other question, brethren?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Pastor D.
Yeah, because I'm not clear that if you have a member who's struggling with their mental health, how would you tell? And if that's not the issue, how are you going to get the church to understand the destructive nature of your clergy killer in that congregation? That makes sense.
That's a very interesting question, Sister D. Pastor D. It's, remember, and this is the most difficult part of it, because we cannot diagnose anyone. We can only begin to suspect something is wrong. And the moment you suspect and you find someone has mental disorder, it's easy to deal with it. And you can carry your elders with you. So the sort of support that can be offered. Remember, church is actually a support system, offers support system to many people. And that could actually bring healing in their personal lives. But if someone has moved to that destructive point or stage in issues of conflict and others, and they become conflict creators, when if a diagnosis has been done, and here you might need support of their family too, to understand where they are coming from, what is affecting them, or share concerns that you may have with them. We don't have GP details for individuals to go to the GP and have them referred, but maybe I don't know what could be done right there. But if you discover someone has been diagnosed as mentally ill, the first thing is, don't withdraw your support as a pastor or as a church. There might be one or two individuals who click with them, and because there will be. So those people, get them to continue to support. I had a very similar one, but this one, sister, I want to share briefly. What happened was, there was this member, and I was told this member does not accept visits from members, doesn't want support from the church. And I was told, Pastor, you can try. So I called the pastor to know what the person was going through. And the person told me their story. And as I'm listening to the story, I asked the question, have you been to your GP? Because it sounds like the issues that you are talking about, the church cannot offer, but your GP may be able to offer. Then on the phone, she said, Pastor, I want to see you. And we set up a meeting. And when I did the visit, I visited with one of the trusted members of that congregation. When we visited the individual, one of the things that the individual raised was, everyone calls me mad. Everyone labels me in church. And then I asked, where else do they do it? They said, when I go for my shopping, there are things that I cannot withstand. And as we talked, I'm just there listening, said, oh, my dear believer, what do you think is causing people to behave the way they behave when you are there? And that stopped her from talking. Said, I don't know. I said, do you think you might need some support from your GP? And the person looked at me and asked me, so what will that do for me with the people? I said, if your GP understands that there are issues that everyone is talking about you, maybe they can help you to know how to deal with that. And asked me, will they give me medication? I said, no, I don't know what they will do. And she actually disclosed, she said, I've actually been put on medication. She was fearing to get medication prescribed, but she was already on medication. Then I said, maybe then you need to go and talk to your doctor about the medication you are on, because it might be causing imbalance in your brain. You know, the person went and before that happened, was put in a nursing home because nobody could care for her. So things can happen, and by questioning and just being there, you can offer the little support that you can. But one thing that I will not advise you to do is to be abused by such individuals. Don't allow them to be abused. You are not a punching bag. Give them the support, but if they don't want your support, step back and allow others who can support do that. Pastor D, I don't know if that answers question or responds adequately.
Yes, it does. It was just wanted that perspective, because it seemed to be a constant theme for your presentation around mental health. And so, yes, that makes sense. And I suppose it's also trying to encourage your church to be positive around people who have mental health issues, is what you're saying. And for the church I'm thinking of did have clergy killers in it, did have a toxic congregation, and also was very negative towards people who have mental ill health. This is some years ago, so hopefully that things have changed. But the interesting thing was that the elder had brought those people into the church, and they were seen as being, they were brought in to help the church. And they had this thing about, yes, we need to help the church, because they saw every pastor that came as a problem. So yeah, so interesting to hear the theory behind it. That makes sense. So this couple were not seen as having mental ill health. I don't think they did, but they had a perspective of we need to help the church because the pastor's a problem. Every pastor that came was a problem. So I don't know how one resolves it, but it's very unpleasant to live through. I can imagine, Pastor Laszlo, very unpleasant indeed. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Is there any other question that is still pending, my sisters and brothers? Okay, I think Pastor Ngui, I can't see any more questions, and we must take this opportunity to thank you for today's presentation. You have taught us how to prepare for a smooth takeoff, the things that we must bear in mind, even as we try to deal with the conflicts in our churches. Myself, I was really impressed by the presentation because you have covered a lot of things, and they are very important things, and I believe all of us are going to benefit from them. You have spoken about clergy and conflict.
Oh, no.
You have touched on clergy killers, that conflicts can kill pastors, and the 6 Ds characteristics were very helpful to me, and I believe to all of us. But you have also spoke of a killer clergy, that even a clergy, a pastor can be a killer. So that one also you have mentioned, and toxic congregations. So we always say that there are some congregations that you go there and there are something like cemeteries. They know how to kill pastors and bury them. But thank God, some of us have survived in those cemeteries. And so with God's help, I believe we will make it. So Pastor, thank you so much.